Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Google Developers Live. My name is Ikai Lan.
Arun and Ikai here.
And just before we get started, I want to tell all of our live viewers that the Hangout button will unfortunately not be working today. We love seeing you, we love talking to you guys, but it's not going to be working, so don't keep trying. I'll remind every 5 minutes for the people that are jumping on a little bit later. It's going to sound like a broken record, but I'd rather let you guys know than if people sit there and try to jump in and not be able to do so. So why don't we go and get started? We've got a good show for you guys today. First off, I've got two announcements. We have two special shows. They're going to be live, but we're going to post them onto youtube.com/Google Developers. The two shows are, well, Arun's doing a really good one tomorrow. It's going to be about Salesforce, and I'm going to be doing one about triggers. So why don't you go ahead and tell them a little about the show you're doing tomorrow?
Yeah, a little plug. So Salesforce.com, as a lot of you guys know, is a very popular cloud-based CRM system.
Is it?
A lot of businesses.
Is it now? Yes, Salesforce is very popular.
And us being a cloud scripting language, there's a lot of synergy there that we figured we should do a GDL about, show you guys how you can connect, both send data up and also receive files and data back, and show it in a spreadsheet, put it in a site. Lots of cool stuff. So hopefully you'll join us tomorrow and get a sense for what that's like and how easy it is to get started, and hopefully you'll walk away with some recipes that you can try out yourself.
And I will definitely be watching that show, partly because I think I'm on it. So I will be here tomorrow, so if you aren't completely sick of the two of us, join us either live tomorrow at, I think it's either 4 o'clock or 4:30 Eastern.
Check our G Plus page.
Yeah, check either our G Plus page or developers.google.com/live. I think it's either 4 or 4:30. I'm pretty sure it's 4:30 though.
We'll be there.
It's an hour long. I think it's 4 o'clock. Yeah, this is it's a little bit longer than our normal shows, which are half an hour.
Actually, I just remember, it's 3 to 4 Eastern.
3 to 4. There you go. Yeah, check the schedule. I'm sorry about that. We changed time zones so much when we're talking to people. And I'm doing a show next, I believe it's next Tuesday. Again, check developers.google.com/live. It's about triggers. So this one is a little bit more beginner level, but a lot of people use AppScript, and you're used to spreadsheet functions and working with docs, but what you don't know is that you can schedule things. You can have code be executed when spreadsheets are open. Not a lot can happen when spreadsheets open, but you can do things on certain events, and I'm going to be talking about how to do this, as well as some advanced techniques of things you can do with triggers. Like, for instance, one thing that a lot of people run into is, how do I make a script that basically runs forever? Right. Well, it's kind of difficult, right? I mean, if you know your script's going to run for 2 hours, you can't, because there's a timeout on how long your script can run for. However, if you chain triggers, it is more or less possible to simulate this, and it's a little bit more durable too.
Another use case is workflows.
Workflows, yes. We have a script that we're working on. It's a little bit secret. No, it's not like anything world-changing or anything, but I'll be talking a little bit about that and how I'm using clock triggers to work with documents that are essentially destructible documents, right? Which you give them out, and after a certain amount of time, they go away. Right. So we'll be talking about that next Tuesday. Just check developers.google.com/live. Now again, I know I'm going to be repeating myself a lot. Do not try to join the Hangout. It's not going to work for you guys today. We're very, very sorry about this, and hopefully we'll have this working at some point. So, okay, I think that's it for the plugs. Why don't we go ahead and let's go and get started.
Did you want to say hello to someone special?
I did. Someone special is Rudy Lehman. We met you at the Los Angeles Hackathon. This was on November 13th. We ran to Rudy, and he said he watched the show religiously. And I was like, wow, we have real fans. So this Rudy drove all the way from Phoenix. Either drove or flew from Phoenix to Los Angeles.
Quite the trip, yeah.
So you could participate in our hackathon, which you give me a pretty good segue into talking about the hackathon. First off, for anyone that's watching from Los Angeles, hi. We had a great time meeting you guys. Hope you liked The Office. I'm really sorry about the confusion at the beginning, but I'm really glad with how the event came out. We had some really great demos where people came out and built things like a conference room scheduler. Am I spending too much of my time in meetings?
Yeah.
Just a lot of really good developers. We're really happy to have met you guys. So I know that you met some cool
Yeah,
people
some
too.
very creative folks that come from all walks of development. Some folks that work for the city of LA, some folks that work in school, some folks that are professional programmers that just code all day and wanted to come and code at a hackathon as well. So really interesting to get the diverse set of developers that use our product and get a lot of first-hand feedback. I know Drew, who was one of our core engineers that was there, he really appreciated meeting a lot of you folks as well. So it was really worthwhile for us, and hopefully it was for you as well. We'll probably do a follow-up blog post just highlighting some of the apps that we got to know and discuss a little bit about just what we learned at the event as well.
The food truck guys, I hope those guys are watching. But really liked meeting you guys, and so we had these two guys. They work for a food truck company, and I was looking at their keyboards, going, "What are all these like rubber things on your keyboard?" And their laptops, let's be fair, they were really disgusting. And they told me, "We're really sorry. We work for a food truck. There's food everywhere, all the time. It's getting all over the place." But these two guys came out. They built a system for hiring and distributing employees around. It was very, very cool. I was very happy to meet them and see that they were doing cool stuff with Google Apps.
Exciting.
So,
should we do release notes?
yeah, go for it.
All right, cool.
I don't think there's anything super earth-shattering in these releases, but we're spending a lot of time to really just improve the polish of AppScript.
Yeah, great. So I think the last office hours we held was on the 14th, and since then we've actually had two releases, one on the 21st, another one earlier this week on the 28th, yesterday actually. Few things that are worth noting. There was an issue around the lock service. So if you tried to gather a lock too quickly and then release it subsequently, some of the releases were not getting queued up properly. So you would run into an issue where you could not get new locks. It would time out and it would just say that you don't have a lock. So we fixed that issue. We re-allowed the ability to have multiple addresses in the reply to.
Yay.
So previously,
I didn't even know you could do that.
you were able to do that, and at some point there was a mistake, and we could only do one. And the third one that we fixed on the 21st was something with the editor, actually. So if you have a library that has HTML content in it, the autocomplete stopped working in the editor. So it was not a runtime issue, it was sort of an authoring development issue, but nonetheless it was painful for our developers, and we went ahead and fixed it. And then the subsequent release, a bunch of enhancements as well. So we did an enhancement to allow you to retrieve the BCC address for an outgoing email message that you may have access to. So when you're parsing an inbox, if you authored an email, or the person that's running the script authored an email, you could find out the BCC address of that message and then do interesting things with it. A long-standing issue with the onSubmit trigger not returning the right values in the event callback. So when you got the data range, it was returning incorrect top and bottom indices, and that caused a lot of problems. So I think this one is probably starred quite a bit in the issue tracker, so we're happy to report that that's fixed now.
Keep starring those issues.
Yes.
Keep starring them. Please star them.
Yes. The next one was around the autocomplete of XML document function. So this one was a little bit more about more about the authoring aspect of things and discovering of what's capable. And then we updated the tree widget, the UI app tree widget, to have some handlers for opening and closing of those nodes. So that's one of the UI app widgets that we recently improved. So those are some of the things we've done. Take a look at these. They are on the developers.google.com/apps-script site. And if you just scroll to the left on the bottom, there's a section for release notes. So keep an eye on it. And if you keep an eye on it, you'll notice that we do quite a few releases. So in November, we probably averaged a release a week.
Yep.
Even with the holidays and everything. Yeah. So and then we'll keep them coming. And at some point during the holidays in December, there will be a freeze, but hopefully we'll have a couple more good releases to report.
Right. So again, the freeze is only a production push freeze. Doesn't mean that we're stopping work. Although you're just full of great ideas today. No, we're going to continue to keep iterating and building features and improving the product. So again, to find these, you can either go to developers@google.com and click through to AppScript, or I personally just like to search for AppScript release notes. So that brings me to something we forgot to plug earlier. For those of you watching, no Hangout today. Really sorry. But we've got a couple of good blog posts too recently. Google Apps Developer blog.
That's right.
What is the exact URL?
You said it right. Google
Wow.
Apps Developers Google Apps Developers blog.blogspot.com.
Let's just tell people to search for it. Look for Google Apps Developer blog, and you'll find a blog. We've got a couple pretty good posts. We've got one from Romain, who always gives us these great posts. And Revivol is the name of his company.
Right.
Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it correctly. But they're doing a lot of very cool stuff with apps and app scripts. So
this one is it's a kind of a utility script that anyone can run. It's a really good example of the power and simplicity, yet the effectiveness of app script. So I think it's all in all just a few dozen lines of script, but it allows you to set reminders in a spreadsheet and then get email reminders and then be able to respond and lots of unique things that you may not use it, but at least you'll find it interesting and useful to adapt for your own purposes.
Yeah, I've been working with AppScript a lot this week. So I don't know what it is about this week where I just had this whole backlog of things I wanted to build, and I've been really happy in the environment. You know, I there's this thing that I thought would take me an hour to do, and it ended up taking me like 5 hours, which isn't a bad thing. It just means like I was totally lost in this thing. I forgot to eat lunch, right? And I forgot, how awesome it is to build stuff within spreadsheets. You know, go Spreadsheets, Tools, Script Editor, because with spreadsheets you automatically get this UI where you can display data and manipulate data. Now the bad thing is that when I wrote the script, I told the clients that we're going to use the script, and again, I'm not doing consulting. It's like Google employees. I told them, I'm like, don't edit anything in the spreadsheet. Like, don't touch this stuff, right? So that's kind of downside of the spreadsheets. Is it's kind of like if you write like a program outside of AppScript, it accesses like the database, and someone goes in the database, just starts messing with all the values, right?
You don't want that.
Yeah, it's and what I'm working on right now is kind of a pretty cool thing with the URL shortener. It's because we're trying to figure out, how are you guys finding us? How are you guys finding about the show, finding about the blog? We want to know, right? We want to figure out if that's coming from Twitter, Google+, the blog, YouTube. We just really want to look at these things. So I'm working on a script, and hopefully that'll be something that I can publish or at least talk about in a future show or article or blog post or something. But let us know your comments. We really should have like a feedback box somewhere that people can drop. And just send
in the you can provide feedback on the documents that we have in the developer side.
You can provide feedback on documents.
That's a little bit more contextual to the help content that we have. Obviously, G+ is a great way to find us. Google+ is a great way to find us and leave us comments and questions there. So we should probably have a
for now, what we want to do is we're going to start planning out the shows for next year. So if you have any ideas for things you want to see or things you want us to do, drop us a line. Who has the easiest email here? I think
you.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Okay, yes, maybe. My
4
email
letters.
is ikai@google.com.
His first name.
Alternatively, you can also email Kalian, who is gkal@google.com. 4-letter email addresses. Love this. So email either gkal@google.com or iki@google.com for ideas about things you want to see in future shows. So, I think that's...
I think there's a couple of the blog posts that I want to talk about real quick.
Go for it.
The one that Eric did, Eric Kalita.
Yes.
It's actually a really good blog post.
Forgot about this one.
So underscorejs, which is a great utility belt library that most JavaScript developers that I know use it for a Node.js application or a browser-based web app. Whatever it is, it's one of those utility scripts. It's sort of like what jQuery is for DOM manipulation. Underscore is for just general programming niceness. So array manipulation, finding things, slicing maps, just the for each. Shortening a for each function or a paradigm, things like that just makes it so much easier, and it's got a great name, great way to access it. _dot function name. It's got a templating syntax I just found out. So Eric wrote a great blog post about how you bring in these third-party open source applications into the fold in AppScript by using the library capabilities. Both for client-side and server-side JavaScript, which I think is really unique as well. So look through that, try it out, provide us your feedback, and we'll continue finding ways to support more of these open source libraries.
Yeah, underscore is, I really like this, especially if you're coming from a library like a language like Python
Right.
or Ruby, you're used to having an each iterator, or you're used to lambdas, or you're used to other craziness like that. It's not crazy, it's cool stuff. And when you come to JavaScript, JavaScript has a lot of really good properties. It's also the kind of default data types are also, they tend to be limited, right? I remember, I don't know if you guys ever worked with this one library called Prototype, which Prototype back in the day, they thought the best approach was to go ahead and add all these methods to array and all that, and it just like made everything go crazy, So I think that's kind of fallen out of favor, which is just extending the base object. So something like underscore kind of wraps it instead. And I think we're seeing this trend more of composition over inheritance.
Did you just start a debate?
Yeah, I did. There's only a few minutes left, so I really should. I think there's no debate. I think wrap things, right? Just wrap things. Don't inherit. Inheritance is
and
bad.
then there's another one from a guest post. Actually, I forget his name. Tom, one of the Googlers that ended up using AppScript for a personal project around an auction house, being able to track the bids and then following up with people, and a really interesting use case. That one actually comes with a video. Go check it out. See what the interesting ways people are using AppScript.
That reminds me of one of the guys we met at the Hackathon who works for charter schools in LA.
That's right.
And the thing about charter schools is, I'm trying to define what a charter school is. It's like a special school?
It's still a public school, from my understanding, that has limited enrollment. And there's oftentimes ends up being a lottery for admission. So when you have 30 spots for a new incoming class, since they may be in a close-by neighborhood, or they may have good teachers, some people tried to enroll in charter school, and there's often a lottery involved in picking who gets to get those 30 slots.
Right. And what the problem they were trying to solve, and again, try to look at things from a problem perspective, was that you have hundreds of thousands of entries, but he's got to pull stuff out of like a hat, right? And that used to be the old way of doing it, pull stuff out of a hat. But with hundreds of entries, it's just like, oh my goodness, this is insane. So instead, he's using Google Forms to submit something. This all goes into a spreadsheet, and he has a custom menu that goes ahead and just kind of randomly starts picking people out, saying, hey, you're lucky, you get to the charter school.
And then showing sort of a trailing list on a big monitor plugged into a laptop, showing stuff from Google Spreadsheets in a nice UI.
A little bit of theatrics there, a little bit of pop-up. Here's your name. You are a tribute. Right? So, all right, so why don't we move ahead into some Q&A?
Cool. So let's see here. Go to moderator.
So I looked at this a little bit before the show, and a common theme here is that we've got a good amount of there's a good amount of what we call feature requests. So I've tried to answer these in the comments. For instance, I'm looking at some of these questions, and some things like, for instance, whoa, some people are adding some stuff in here. People are adding questions live. That's not a bad thing. There's your pop-up calendar. For instance, there was one I saw over here. Can we use scripts in spreadsheets on mobile devices without desktop views? Well, there's nothing to announce this time. I mean, that's a very, very new product. We definitely, we've been saying mobile first. Think we should start putting our money where our mouth is. But yes, that's something that we're thinking about. We're always thinking about these things, but we really don't have anything to announce this time. So don't wait for that. Things you can do are you can build a web UI, and you can access that via a mobile phone. Of course, you're doing it through your browser. So
in fact, the blog post that I mentioned, they actually showcase the tablet scenario there.
Cool, very cool. Yeah, you're right, the tablet stuff. I remember that post now. So there's a few questions here I wanted to get to first. There were two I wanted to answer on the show. One was, whoa, there's a lot of stuff here. People are adding stuff live. There are two. One is what's the difference between using spreadsheets, using ScriptDB, and using Fusion Tables? So let's start with each of these one by one. Fusion Tables is it's a Google product that allows you to use geodata and create these really beautiful overlays and maps using this geodata that you can visualize things going on with locations. And okay, you could tell that I really not really an expert on Fusion Tables, but I used to sit next to one. So I always used to kind of overhear things you should say. And you can do things like you can do a lot of the stuff that you could do with the Maps API, Maps maps service,
Right.
in that you can do some geocoding, you can do bounding box queries. Bounding box would be something like, show me everything within a 5-mile radius of this point. And you can just do querying on this. So if you're building a service that involves map points, points of interest, you probably want to look at something like Fusion Table. It's gonna serve your needs really well. Now, on the other hand, this leaves spreadsheets and ScriptDB, when to use one, when to use the other. I've been using spreadsheets a lot these last few days, mostly because you get a couple of benefits. You get a built-in UI, you get a ton of features. You get sorting, filtering, you can add charts very easily. You get versioning?
Versioning.
Right. I actually never checked the version yet because there's too many edits.
It does become a lot of versions, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But the Spreadsheets has a very nice UI. Now, again, the downside is something I mentioned earlier, which is because it has UI. If you give it to people, you give them a chance to really break things.
Yeah.
So that's Spreadsheet. ScriptDB, on the other hand, is kind of neat because ScriptDB is, if you have a single instance of a script, you have a global ScriptDB instance that's shared for all users of the script. Now, you might be asking, why would I want to do this? You can technically also do this via Spreadsheets if you open a spreadsheet via ID. The difference is that there's no UI for ScriptDB. The filter semantics and the objects you can save in ScriptDB tend to be a little bit more robust. They look closer to JavaScript objects, and you've got a little bit better programmatic query language. Like you can say, show me all the objects that, show me all the people that have an age greater than 45. Right, and that's much easier to ScriptDB, whereas if you were to do this in, I think you should be able to filter in Spreadsheets, but it's not quite as intuitive.
Yeah.
You're going to feel other things in ScriptDB that are kind of neat. But again, also, appending to spreadsheets, you pretty much only can append in a row format. With ScriptDB, you can actually have embedded objects.
Right, and they can be jagged. So one object can look in one shape,
Right.
another object could be completely different, and then you can actually have them all in the same bucket. So it gives you a lot more capabilities as far as the type of things you store.
Right. The only thing about storing objects of different types, of different shapes, is that try to keep them fairly consistent. Now, you don't want to, I don't like it when it's too rigid, but if you keep it consistent, like if you have 3 or 4 types, then your program, is going to be that crazy. If every single object you store looks totally different, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're gonna drive yourself nuts. So I think those are a lot of the main differences. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so I
feel
think
like I'm missing something.
no, it's a great question, really, because I think so I find myself using both. I think it's the questions I ask myself is, what's the volume of data? If it's just maybe 100, couple hundred rows of data, and I'm mostly just appending very tabular looking data, spreadsheet's fine. But if I need to query something based on various filters, or if I don't know ahead of time if there's going to be nested objects and things like that, I usually tend to go with ScriptDB, also because it can store thousands of records. The size limits there is based on the total bytes rather than number of records. So those are the 2 things that I ask for: is, am I querying a lot, and am I just appending? Right. Updates are a pain with spreadsheets as well, because you have
they are kind of annoying.
Right.
Yeah. The thing about spreadsheets and ScriptDB to be aware of is that the filtering options only go so far.
Right.
So if you're working with a relatively small number of objects, and when I say relatively small, I'd say a couple hundred, maybe even a couple thousand. Instead of trying to build these incredibly complex filters, it's sometimes easier just to create something like an array and just loop over every single object and say, does it match, does it match, does it match? This also makes your code, in some instances, easier to test and a little bit more robust. So it just it depends on what your specific needs are.
And then there's actually a third service besides Fusion Table called JDBC. So in fact, we have Cloud SQL as well. So if you have hundreds of thousands of rows and you're used to a relational database querying mechanism through SQL, we actually have an answer for that as well. So depending on your background, and if tabular data is the way to go for you, that might be another option. And it's actually, you can get a Cloud SQL instance now for free for till up to June, I think, for testing purposes.
Right, and
so
I think you get a certain amount of data. Like, I don't remember what the data limit is.
Yeah, and I just set one up for testing myself, and it was actually fairly pain-free, so try it out.
Pain-free?
Did I say
You
that
kind of
okay?
said, you kind of made up a word between pain-free and painful. It's kind of funny. Yeah, it is, but he is right though. It's what you want to do is you want to go to the Google APIs console, and you search that by going to Google. Search for Google APIs console is the easiest way. I never remember the exact URL.
You just search for everything?
Yeah,
All right.
that's just how things are
we
done.
have one.
Yep, it's a good thing too. So yeah, look for that, and you'll be able to enable Cloud SQL and start talking to it. We've got some samples on developers.google.com/apps-script. So look there in the tutorials for how to talk to Cloud SQL. So I want to answer one more question before the show ends, and it's a question from, hold on, it's the one about working with UIs. So let me see. This thing, it's
Did it go to the next page, maybe?
It could be.
No, there's only
It could
one
be.
page.
Anyway, the question was something along the lines of, when I'm working with UI app, it used to be that when there was an error, it would show the error in the spreadsheets or the UI app or whatever, and now it doesn't do it anymore.
Right there, there's a question
Okay,
from
let's
Lenny.
see. From Lenny in Louisiana. When an error occurs from UI, it's just generic error now. We'll look into this. I'm not sure. We should find out if this is what we intended to do. I'm not sure if it was. It says, before it used to give you the line of the problem. And for a novice scripter like myself, that was a huge advantage. So I've been working with UIs a lot these last few days, and when UIs start to get a little bit more complex, there's something called the model view presenter pattern. Excuse me. I'm not going to overly advocate it, but the idea is that in code that you use to build a UI, try to make this as simple as possible. And what you do is you want to abstract out some more complex bits into these functions that can run without UI components. So an example is this thing I'm building for URL shortening. For instance, I have a UI that pops up, just asks you for a URL and some options. It has a place that calls URL shortener. Now, in the beginning, I just tested it as is, where I put all the code in one function, built a UI, built a handler, whatever, and I was testing like running the code in the UI, pushing the button, see if it worked. And after a while, this got too hard. So instead, I took the URL shortening part, which isn't that complex, but there was a bug there. I extracted out into its own function. I wrote a quick function called test, and I did all my testing and debugging within the scope of the script editor. Now, this gets you most of the way there. What it doesn't really help you do is debug issues with the UI itself. So that's going to be problematic, but for the most part, you can save yourself a lot of pain by doing as much of your development in the script editor as possible. One of the feature requests that we've seen from people is, give me a way to do unit tests. Right, and unit tests are these things that you write code that validates whether your code is working or not. Like right now, there are different ways you could fake it out in app script, but there's no real always be running this and tell me what's failing. I think that'd be a really cool feature, but again, we don't have anything announced about this. But that's one thing you want to do is try to do as much of your coding within the script editor as possible, and kind of at the last second link it up with your UI. Now, this isn't always possible, and when your UIs get complex, it just isn't possible. But try to hold off that pain as long as possible.
Decouple.
Right, and this is true not just in app script, but in anything, whether it's Google Web Toolkit, whether you're building an HTML service, just anything. So
cool. I think we're up on time.
I think we are up on time. So we're sorry if we didn't get around to your question. I've tried to answer them in the comments. A lot of these are feature requests, so go ahead and file them with us. They're under apps script issues, so you could search for that in Google, and it should be one of the first results. Or any search engine, Ikai's customsearchengine.com, which doesn't exist yet. Don't try going there. And you'll be able to find these issues, create a feature request, and this way we could track it when we're looking at what the backlog is. And if you see anything that's really important to you, star it. Don't overly star, because it's the whole crying wolf thing, and we won't know what's important. So star the issues that are important to you. Again, we're sorry for the issues with the Hangout for those of you that want to jump in live. Apologies. We will try to have it working before the next show. And anything else we have to announce before we jump off?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, so the two announcements we did at the beginning of the show. I'm just going to remind you guys again. Arun's doing a show about how to integrate AppScript with Salesforce tomorrow, so definitely jump on if you can. If not, we're posting to youtube.com/Google Developers. All right, that's a channel of everything we're doing. And if you want to find AppScript specific videos, you can search for AppScript videos, and we have a page that we try to update periodically with all the newest videos, including office hours and special Google Developer Live shows. And next Tuesday, I'm doing an introductory show about triggers. So Salesforce, triggers.
I'm sure there'll be more.
Yep, and we'll be doing a lot more too.
Yep.
So
thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you at the next show.